Most guitarists just throw away broken pedals. But what if I told you there was a tool that could help you fix them broken pedals that cost less than the price of a takeaway? Stay around to the end and I'll show you a chief engineer approved tool that'll help you fix any pedal for under £10. You'll be able to resurrect all your broken pedals, amplifiers and music gear with this simple tool. This is everything you're going to need to build a tool that'll help you fix any pedal or any audio circuit. Believe me when I say this is the most important bit of kit that I own. I literally couldn't fix pedals without it. So what do we need? First up, we need a normal jack to go into, say, an amplifier or whatever with a guitar cable. This is some grey cable from the 70s. It's pretty cool. I heard about this first, this type of cable, when Jared from the Guitar Knobs podcast talked about the old grey 70s cable, and I was like, hang on a minute, I've seen that somewhere before. And I found this in the back of a Bell & Howell amplifier or a Bell & Howell speaker cab. There's a big roll of it, so I've got loads. Anyway, you need any sort of guitar cable, not the ones with side-by-side in speaker cable. That's no good. You want a proper guitar cable, i.e. the earth is round the live. We'll get to that in a minute. Then you need a 100 NF or a 0.1 UF, if you're going to say it like that, capacitor. It's probably better if you get one that's axial with the wires coming out the end of it here. That would have been much easier. But I would suggest getting one that's at least 400 volts rated, because if in the future you decide to fix an amplifier, you're going to need something rated to the voltages inside there. If it's just pedals, you need anything up to, 18 volts or whatever the highest output pedal that you plan on working on is. But I would suggest using the 400 volt cap just for future proofing it. You're also going to need what I would call a crocodile clip. Now, I don't know what these are actually called. Maybe they are called crocodile clips and it's not just a Navy thing. This one here is an old one. It's a Bulgin branded one made in Great Britain. In fact, it actually says made in England. Get in. So you need one of these. Any type will do. You can get a new one or what have you. And then you also need a multimeter lead. So this is the lead off a fluke, or so something like this. The fluke, the leads off them, you need a lead, just the one. You can buy them for about £3. In fact, you could buy all of this kit here for about £10 max, I think, if you shopped around. So £10 and you can fix any pedal you like. It's advisable. If you're going to work on amplifiers, you definitely need. But if you're just working on pedals, it's advisable to get some heat shrink. I would suggest you need a larger size and a smaller size. I think I'm actually going to need a thicker size than that, but we'll find that when we come to it. I've spent the last 23 years as a Royal Navy chief engineer. I've been fixing systems under pressure that you can only imagine. The exact same troubleshooting method that I'm going to use in this video is what I've used on warships to fix countless defects and get the ship operational and ready to fight. Stay around to the end and I'm going to show you the tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years. It's time for the Joe H5 drawing. Let's get stuck in and see exactly what we're building. And I'm going to start off from here. So from this we have the live, which is the tip that carries the signal, and the ground, which is the outer sheave. So if we imagine that this is our live connection, that's what's going to carry the sound from our that's what's going to feed the sound into our amplifier from whatever we're working on. And then we also have an earth as well, and they go into one cable, or one wire, whatever you want to say. And this will be your live, and this is your negative. Now if we look at this side on, what's probably not showing up on camera is you have an outer sheave, which is the insulation. Then we have a wire mesh, which is our negative. Then we have another layer of insulation, which is on this one, it's white, but it could be any colour. And then inside that is our core of cable. So that's a side-on view of this. It's the same as any other guitar cable. What we're going to do is we're going to use the live is going to attach to this, to our capacitor. Now, I know that a capacitor is drawn like this in drawings, but what the hell does that mean to anyone? If you're like me and you're not an electrical engineer, that means nothing. So I'm just going to draw a capacitor in here and write 0.1 UF, because that's what it is, or microfarads for those who hate me saying UF. And then the earth isn't going to attach to this whatsoever. The earth is just going to go straight past it. Okay? And then we come to this arrangement. So here, it doesn't matter what the insulation system is on here. We're just going to use, I mean, this one hasn't got any insulation on. So it's just going to use the center core, which attaches to this tip, okay? So the wire inside there attaches to the tip. And that's going to attach to the other side of our capacitor. So that's going to come out of there, and then it's going to go to our little, I don't know what you would call it, our little pointer, if you like, this. And that is our live, okay? Bear with me. Now this end here is going to go through just a normal, I like to use the silicone wire that I buy because it's flexible, it doesn't burn easily. It's mainly because it's really flexible, so you can get it in places. And we're going to attach our wire here and run it off, and it's going to attach to our crocodile clip. That's our crocodile clip, which is going to be on negative. Okay, so that's how we're going to build this. Don't worry, we're going to use it to fix some pedals. I've had these on my bench for at least a year. I've been meaning to get round to them and just haven't got to them. But anyway, so this is the system. Now the idea is that anywhere we point this pointer, signal is going to travel down the pointer, go through our capacitor, so it's separated from our amplifier, because, well, we'll get to that anyway, through our capacitor and down and into the amplifier through this. And our good amplifier that we're using to test things is going to amplify anything that this touches. So if you play guitar through your pedal and you touch that on the input, you'll get a clean guitar signal, because the signal's coming from the guitar, going to the input of your pedal, and then through this to the amplifier. Don't worry about using it, because I'll show you in action. If you're anything like me, words or someone writing on a page like this and drawing a drawing means absolutely nothing to you until you see it working. So don't worry, I will show you it working. Now this earth here, this side of the earth, this has to be connected to the ground, to the earth of your pedal or of whatever equipment you're testing. If it's an amplifier, it needs to be connected to the chassis, because that's earthed. Or if it's a pedal, you could attach it to the enclosure, or you could attach it to any earth point within inside the pedal, and that just makes the circuit. Now, why do we use this capacitor here? Now I can hear people already shouting at the screen saying, "Joe, this will work without the capacitor." It really won't. And this is because inside our pedal that we're testing, there is both AC signal, which is our guitar sound, our sine wave. And if you look at it, you'll have the positive half and your negative half, which you don't need to know about, whatever. Well, you probably should, but maybe you don't need to know now. This is our guitar tone coming through. Now that will pass through a capacitor. So here's our capacitor here, and I'll draw it like an actual cap. And our wavy guitar tone is just going to pass right through it, like that. No problem. But what it doesn't allow to pass through it is DC. So the voltage you put inside your pedal from your DC jack or from your battery is DC voltage. And DC voltage, instead of being a wavy sound wave, is just a straight line. I mean, if you zoom in enough, it's not a straight line, which is where you get noise from your power supply from. But that's a separate thing. And a capacitor, which is drawn like this on a drawing, will not allow DC, the straight line. It blocks the straight line, so it cannot get through there. But it does allow AC through. So the reason about having this is that it allows the AC signal, your guitar signal, to go through our tool and to your amplifier, but it doesn't allow the DC signal within inside the guitar pedal to go through and go to your amplifier. Because if it disappears from the pedal into your amplifier, the pedal isn't going to be working. See what I mean? It keeps the DC in the pedal when it needs to be. That's as simple as I can make it. Unfortunately, I am a mechanical engineer and not an electrical engineer, so there will be electrical engineers listening to this description and saying, "Joe, you idiot, what are you talking about?" Well, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking to people who are like me and not electrically minded and think about things in a bit more of a mechanical manner. This is how I explain this stuff to myself when I was learning it. So, let's get cracking. First things first, I'm going to strip the outer sheathing off this. Now, there's tools that you can use that strip the sheathing off nice and easy. I don't use them because if you know me by now, I like to do things the hard way. And so the hard way of stripping it is to use a Stanley blade obviously with no handle because that would be way too easy, just to cut the outside sheathing. I'm just going to run around that, and when you feel a little bit of like resistance from the inside, something hard, that's going to be the earth sheath on the inside. Now you're probably going to be using brand new guitar cable, which is much easier to cut than this old stuff. It's kind of gone brittle over the years. From the 50s or 60s, I believe. It might be from the 70s, but I doubt it come out of a really old speaker cab. So there's this layer of paper, which I don't think you're going to get on a new one. I'm not too sure. To be honest, I haven't stripped any new cables of late. And inside that is this stuff. It's like an armoured metal sleeve, if you like, and that's our earth. It's attached to this on your cable. Now you can either use like this, a removable fitting where you'd have to wire it up yourself, or you could just buy a patch cable lead and cut one end of the patch cable off and you've got it, which is what I'd advise because it's way easier. So let's get rid of all this paper that's in the way. We don't need that. Now, much like if you're wiring up a guitar pickup, you just cut down this sheathing and then give it a twist to make it into like one single cable rather than a mismatch of wires. Once you've got it like this, give it a twist and you'll have two separate wires here. Now, what I like to do is, because I know I make loads of mistakes, 100%, if I can mess something up, I'm going to mess it up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skin this first, the live, take the sheathing off the live, right at the end of it, so it's away from the earth, just in case I chop this a bit short and I have to take this further back. I didn't do that, so that's good. We'll give that a twist. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tin this and I'm going to tin this, and that just gives us two solid cables to work with. One thing I will say is it's probably worth spending a little bit more money and getting a good cable, because this thing gets dragged around the workshop floor. It gets twisted in all angles and funny ways, because when you're fault finding, sometimes you'd have to get into some tight spots and stuff. So I would advise maybe spending a little bit more than you think you need to, just because it'll last you longer. Now, the two things we need to attach, one is this, going through that, and the other is just straight up wire, which I can attach now. So what I like to do with the earth wire is, if I strip it, and then, if we move all this out the way, we sort the earth wire out first, and tin the end of it, so then we've got a solid core to work with again. I don't advise using solid core for this, by the way, because one thing about solid core is it's not very flexible. I don't mean like the Evidence Audio SIS cables, because they're meant to be, used as instrument cables. I mean like if you get pedal building cable and it's solid core, sometimes if you move it around a lot, it's going to snap. You don't want that. And then we take this bad boy. Oh, do you know what? My wife come in a workshop yesterday and nicked me screwdriver for something, and now I can't find it. Fantastic. Choose a different one. So if we unscrew this a bit, now, if you're using a new one of these, you probably won't need to do this, but because this is an old one, I'm just going to rough up the surface here and make sure that we've got a good connection. The last thing you want to do is not get a connection here and then think a pedal's broke when it's not. So we can put our screw back in a tin, if you can get it back in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a loop with this that we've already stripped, and feed it through the hole, and then the loop gets wrapped around the screw. Ooh, well done, Joe. Pulled it too hard. No longer a loop. Brilliant. Well done. Now what you've got to think is the screw is going to get tightened this way round, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey and all of that. So I want the body of this, the actual wire that goes in, to be on the left-hand side. So when I tighten it, it drags the wire into the screw rather than it being this side. And when I'm tightening it, it's pushing the wire out of the screw. If you can tighten it either way, it doesn't matter as long as you've got a connection there. But for me, I just find it easier to have the cable going on this side of the screw, so when I tighten it, it kind of pulls it in. And then we just give that a little tighten. I like to do this bit first, so then I know I haven't got to, like, you know, the other bit is more permanent, it's a solder joint or what have you. Whereas this bit here, if I mess this up and I have to change the cable or do anything, it's easier. Just snip the end or undo this screw and I'm done. Whereas if I have to change it once it's on the other cable, it means soldering and it's just a bit more permanent. There you go. There's that in there. Now, all we have to do is strip this end of it and give that a tin, funnily enough. The reason why I tin it is because it's just easier to work with once it's tinned. All the strands stay together and you've got something solid to bend around. Now we're getting to the fun bits. These two bits need to marry up. So I'm going to try and do the helicopter method. They're uneven sizes, so probably not, because the larger one won't bend at all. But it doesn't matter as long as they're joined together and you get a good solder joint. I would say with this sort of thing, you do want a good mechanical connection because, you know, I make these maybe every 12 months or so because I absolutely destroy them ragging them around a bench and stuff. Because when you're trying to fault find, you don't want to have to be like super careful with your tester, because if you're trying to baby this, you're not concentrating on what you're doing. Now, I also like to bend this along the cable back on itself. So this is pointing towards this way, even though you want to use it this end here, I still point it this way, and I'll show you why. I've spent the last 23 years as a Royal Navy chief engineer. I've been fixing systems under pressure that you can only imagine. The exact same troubleshooting method that I'm going to use in this video is what I've used on warships to fix countless defects and get the ship operational and ready to fight. Stay around to the end and I'm going to show you the tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years. So once you're at this bit, next thing you're going to need is some large sheathing heat shrink. Now the reason why you need it large is because it's got to go over the top of this cable here, and all we do is feed it over the top of our live onto the actual sheathing of our guitar cable, push it right the way down to the live sticking out the end, but you've covered all the earth bit. Great. And then what you should do is get your heat gun, you know, like heat it up so then it shrinks. But what I'm going to do is use my lighter because I've just always done this and I prefer it. And again, I know someone's going to write in the comments, why don't you just get a heat gun, blah, 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 blah. It's because I've been doing it this way for so long, because on board you just do not have time to faff about trying to get a heat gun into position. And do you know what it is? It's not so much getting a heat gun, even though that may be 5 decks away and you have to travel around and set it up or whatever. It's getting a power supply, because on board most of the equipment runs off 115, so 115 volts. But there's a lot of 240 volts, there's a lot of 440 volts. And faffing about getting the right power to where you need to work, which is invariably somewhere in the bilge or really up high or in an awkward position, it just doesn't seem worth it when you can pull that out of your pocket and just heat shrink it. So before anyone starts firing whatever at me saying just get a proper thing, no. Now, this is where we are. We've got our live sticking out the end. We've got our earth wire now attached. I've made that well too long, but it doesn't matter because it'll attach in the pedal, whatever. So this has got to attach to this and to this. What I normally like to do is I'll cut some of this heat shrink off and put it over the top of this part of over the top of this bit really, and slide it right the way down out the way. Then you can solder your capacitor in place and slide this back down over the top of the capacitor so it's completely insulated and hidden. But I can't find a 100-volt cap that I've got that is small enough to fit in this, that is rated up to 400 volts. I'm going to go ahead and have one more look. If not, I'm just going to use the orange drop. I don't really want to use that because I want to put it in a pedal. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate the support. I hope that you get value from this content, and I hope that this audio probe helps you fix your pedals. If you get value from this content, can I ask a huge favour? YouTube have this new function called hyping. I'm not down with the kids. This is all new to me. But if you're on your mobile phone and you scroll to the messages, instead of clicking on the messages, if you swipe, it gives you the option to hype this video. I'd really appreciate it if everyone could just press that hype function and see if we can share this to more people and help everyone learn how to fix guitar pedals. Thank you. Get in, check this bad boy out. And it's a Soviet-made paper and oil cap, whatever. That'll do. It's small enough to fit inside the sheathing, which is what I want. So let's cut the sheathing before I forget, because I tell you what, it's always advisable to put the sheathing on first, the heat shrink, because what I normally do is I get it all into place, we get our nice cap in there, we've done all the hard bit, it's soldered in, brilliant, and then you forgot to put the sheathing on, so you can't get it on. So slide that over the end now and get it out the way, and then you can forget about it then, it's there. So what we're going to do is we're going to skin the end of this. I'm probably going to do it with my blade. My blade, I sound like a gangster then, didn't I? I'm like the least gangstery person in the world these days. In fact, the most gangster thing I ever do is probably stay up all night working, so I'm not sure that counts. Right. There we are. And look how nice that copper looks on there. It looks very bright because obviously it's made for signal purity when on a tester. And this isn't a new wire either. I've had this for some time. Right, now that that's been tinned, I'm going to bend it into a loop. I'm going to bend this one into a loop. Another thing is, for this, you want a non-polar cap, so there's no point in putting like an electrolytic cap in here if it's the right value but rated up, because you don't want to have to start like making sure you're getting it the right way around. There's no point messing about and adding that into the mix as well. You want the least amount of thinking possible to get the best results, right? So all we're going to do is marry the two hooks together and give them a squeeze. You should use your flat nose pliers for this. In fact, I am going to use my flat nose pliers, because if you clip the wire, you're going to have to start again. It's just a pain. All you need is a good mechanical connection between them. So then when you solder it, it just, you know you've got the connection there. But there. Then we can snip off the excess, because you don't want that poking through your insulation and touching stuff. And then same again with this side. Look at that, I'm automatically going to my snips again instead of using the flat nose. Just can't help myself, can I? Right. And then this is the last solder joint on this bit of equipment. And believe me when I say this is like essential equipment for fault finding. If I owned a studio, not that I'm that way inclined, but if I had a studio or a band, or I did my own maintenance on my gear, I would definitely be making one of these things. And then all we do now is slide our heat shrink up. Let it cool down before you slide your heat shrink up, right? Because if it's red hot and you slide the heat shrink over, I mean, it probably won't happen with this one because it's quite big, but sometimes it'll start shrinking and stick before you get it right the way over. Not ideal. So we want to cover, really, this isn't big enough, this heat shrink. I want to cover the whole thing, really. But it doesn't matter. As long as I've got all the bare metal covered, then we can take our lighter and shrink this down over it. And all this does is just make sure there's no bare metal showing, no wire showing. So when you're testing stuff, nothing's going to short out on the enclosure or inside the enclosure. And more importantly, if you work on amplifiers and stuff like that, a lethal voltage isn't going to be present at the cap where you can touch. So you want to make sure that everything's rated to the right voltage. So if you're going to be working on valve amps, really you want 400, at least 400 volts. Right, there we go. Now, this end will get plugged into a working amplifier that you're going to use. This gets clipped onto your pedal, and then wherever I touch this, we're going to hear the sound of it. Right, now it's time to put the tool in action. You're going to see me trace out the circuit. We're going to start at the input jack, and then we're going to go through the circuit, part by part, following the signal path, until we get a change in signal. We're either going to hear the signal gets weaker, and therefore we know there's a problem in that area, or the signal's going to cut out, or something weird's going to go on. And that's how we know where to look. Every point of the circuit that I touch with the probe is going to amplify that point of the circuit in our working amplifier. And then I'll be able to tell exactly what's going on at that point of the circuit. Today we're going to use it to fault find on a pedal with a defect, but you could equally use it to fine tune your pedal along the way. Maybe you want to add more mids in at the beginning so you can test the circuit with the probe, and then you can alter something and test it again at that point and just see what's going on. This tool has immeasurable value, but one thing I will caution, if you're using it for an amplifier, you have to make sure that every part is rated to the highest voltage in the amplifier. If you get a 450 volt 100 NF cap and use that inside the probe, then it's going to be safe for pretty much everything, and that's what I advise. Now it's time to put it in action. Let's try and fault find on this pedal. I mean, it's an anchor drive that I know is working, by the way, so I've just created the defect on this for the purposes of the video, but this is how I would fault find on anything when I get it in. Now, first things first, we connect our audio probe to our amplifier, the working amplifier that we're going to use. I'm going to use my little gizmo here to add to this wire to extend it to my amp because it's miles away. I used to have just a desk amp, Blackstar Fly, that was my desk amp. You could get something like that yourself, or you could just make this cable longer. We need to take our crocodile clip and attach that to the earth of the equipment we're testing. You know, this could work on an amplifier, a pedal, or whatever. Or even a guitar if you want to test the pickups. So we connect to the earth there. And now, anywhere we touch on the circuit, we're going to hear what's happening. Of course, going into the input of this circuit, I've got the TC Electronics wire tap. Let's get something that's a bit... It helps if it's chords, you know, while you're fault finding. There you go. So we take that off. Wherever we point this now, we're going to get sound. So if I point to the output jack, we get sound. And that tells me that the bypass loop is working because our signal's going from the input to this switch, out of the switch, and back to here. Now what happens when we turn the pedal on? There's no sound, or a very faint sound. So something isn't quite working. So let's trace it out. We go to the input of our 3-pole double throw switch. The sound's making it from the input to there. Then the input to the circuit is this tag here. And it goes from this tag to this cap here. This is the input cap. So if I go to the input cap, that tells me that sound is getting from the switch to the tag board. Now if I go through the input cap to this tag here, that tells me that the input cap is passing signal through it. Then we've got our first MOSFET. On the output of the MOSFET, what's going on? I'll tell you what we'll do before we do that. Let's just turn both the gains up on a preamp and power amp. So the MOSFET is giving the most out that it can. So this is the input to it. The output. Clearly we're getting amplification there. So the output of this first MOSFET, this is the input. There's the output. Perfect. Then we go to this little cap here, this 100 NF cap. That's the output cap for this. Well, it's a coupling cap, but that's the output coupling cap. Now, it sounds like it's working there to me, but this is what we're getting on the output. So clearly something is wrong. It goes from this output cap to this dual concentric pot here. So what this is 2 pots stacked together. So the bottom row on the pot is the output, the master volume for the preamp, and the top row on the pot is the master volume for the power amp. So if I go to the bottom row, that's the output of this pot on the bottom row. That tells us that the signal is going from this cap to this pot and then out again, and it goes in to this cap here. So the input to this cap here is here. That's telling me that we've got signal going to this tag here. So let's go to the output side of the output cap. There's no signal. Input side of the output, this is the input coupling cap for this transistor. So if we go to the input side of this coupling cap, the output side of this coupling cap, nothing. So that's telling us that there's a problem somewhere with this cap. It could be defective, but if we look a bit closer, we can see that the cap is actually not attached. So there's no signal getting to this cap because it's not attached. But if I was to then solder that in place, Let's fix it on the fly. Of course, I just desoldered that to show how to use the audio probe. Well, now that that's soldered in place, we can go to the output side of this coupling cap. I mean, we can just trace the rest of the system out now. So then it goes to this transistor here, our power amp, goes to the output side of that. So clearly we're getting some amplification, because the input side of that sounds like this, and the output side of it sounds like this. Then this is the output cap for that. That's working. Then we go to the input side of this pot, then the output side. Then it goes round to the switch, then to the next tag on the switch that it's going to, and then it eventually comes round and goes to our output. And so we fixed the problem. We know we fixed the problem. But what I do is go through the circuit and follow the signal path right the way along until I get to the point where the circuit isn't doing what I expect. So it's either sounding misbiased instead of sounding good, or the treble's dropped out of it, or, you know, you lose signal, as in this case, or the issue that you're finding with the pedal presents itself. Then you can look at that area of the circuit, like with a real fine-tooth comb, make sure you've got all the right value capacitors and resistors in there, make sure that everything's wired up properly. More often than not, I've put a wire in the wrong place, because I watch a lot of YouTube content while I'm building, or I try and better myself by learning while I'm building. I'll be watching how-to videos, or, you know, maybe sometimes just theoretical videos. But I get through the circuit sort of in a daze, and I might have put one of the wires in a wrong place, because I use building pedals as therapy, basically. And that is how I fault find. Now, if we undo all of this, we can plug our amplifier, get rid of our probe, plug our amplifier straight in the back here, and our pedal works. Back off the preamp and power amp and give it a boost. Completely transparent. And then we can bring up the gain, bring up the power amp, bring up the preamp. It all works. All the controls fine. But if the controls weren't working, I could just trace the system out with my audio probe in hand and find the point where it stopped working from the input, and then, you know, Bob's your uncle, you found the issue. I can almost hear people screaming at the screen now saying, Joe, but not all of us have got a wiretap, and not all of us want to go out and pay 20 quid for one. Fine, they're actually discontinued now as well, so whatever. All you have to do is plug your guitar into the input, lie it down somewhere, or put it in a stand so it's safe, and then strum your guitar, and while it's ringing out, you can just go through and audio probe your pedal. It's as simple as that. I hope that you've learned something here, because this is, well, it was a game changer for me, especially building pedals, developing pedals, biasing JFETs, all of that good stuff. I use an audio probe for it all. And now, as an added bonus, let's just have a look at some other pedals and circuits and see how I go about finding out what's wrong with them. Next up to look at is this, a Session Master Award Session preamp. I've never seen one of these in the flesh before, but there you go. I mean, I don't know. There's a batteries powered here, or you can put 9 volts in here. I'm just going to put the 9 volts in, I think. Let's just double check. I'm pretty sure it says it'll take any adapter giving a positive or negative output between 9 and 30 volts DC can also use an adapter that provides 60 to 20 volts AC. Wow. No harm can be done to this unit from any adapter, so there you go. That's pretty cool. Does sound like there's something rattling around inside, but that may be the actual battery snap inside it, so whatever. Let's take it apart and have a look. Now, I think one of the pots is US, so we'll have a look at that. Is what I've been told anyway, but I'm not too sure. We can just take it apart and have a look. As I say, I've never used one of these. If anyone's ever used one before, please let me know. Be interesting. I love the fact that it looks a little bit like the old Marshall pedals. It just reminds me of them. And I do like these 2-part enclosures. They're great for, oh, there you go. They're great for maintenance, because you can just pull the bottom off, get that out the way, and then you've got all the parts inside here. Doesn't look like it's been messed around with, so it does look just original as it was. I don't like the fact that they just poked the wires through and soldered them on. That's not very good, but it is what it is. So the power supply here, we've got some diodes down here, which I'm assuming is doing a full wave rectification. Not too sure on that. And what was it that was rattling? Maybe these switches. Don't know, but he did say that one of these pots that one feels a bit loose, and then this one here is a little bit stiffer. Either way, we'll find out when we plug it in. So to get it plugged in, I'm going to go, just the output for my amplifier for now is going to go into here, because the input and outputs are upside down. Of course they are. Maybe because you're meant to, no, it's just, I don't know, weird. Session Masters wrote on it pointing this way, but the controls are this side. Very odd setup that. So there's the output, and now let's get the input coming from our TC electronic wire tap. Put that in there. And then we've got our 9-volt DC in, just a regular power supply. There we are. Does it turn on? Yes, it does. Not very bright. Right. So I've also got my new Hi-Fi Man headphones. If anyone hasn't tried these, I'll leave a link in the description. They're fantastic. They're so good. Right, anyway, we get them on and then press play on a wire tap. And we can hear the bypass signal going through it. Brilliant. And then what happens when we turn the pedal on? There we go. Now the treble. It's working to me. Can you hear that? It's like a little bit of scratch. Yeah, wait there. Let's stop that. A little bit of scratchiness. Now that can be two things, okay? So scratchiness on a pot can either be that there's voltage on a pot, which means that there's a capacitor that's failed, or it can mean that there's a bit of dirt in there. Or in cases like the Super Hard On, or my Anchor Drive, or something like the Thorpe Gunshot, all of them sorts of pedals, the gain pot actually works off transistor bias, so there is voltage on the pot, so it does scratch when you're moving it, and it's supposed to. Let's see. Yeah, this is an interesting pedal. I may look for one of these myself. Well, let's hear the rest of the pots. That one makes the same scratching noise. Nothing. Right, let's press play again, see what it all does. Bit of a jump on that one, maybe because I've got them engaged. Oh, maybe it's this pot. Scratchy, and the shaft, these ones here are all solid, and the shaft on this one's just a little bit loose. I don't know. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is I've got this contact cleaner, and I'm going to use that for inside the pots. So to use that inside the pots, what we want to do is we want to get right inside. It would be ideal if we could get to the front of the pot so we could get in there. So I'm just going to go through the back here, do this. Just a little squirt in each one. It's quite an old preamp, so, you know, give that a work through. See, all the pots actually make sound, which is the funny thing. I didn't think they would if it was defective, you know. To be honest, sometimes these disc caps can induce noise or stuff like that. And maybe, you know, this was wrapped around one of them. That could possibly be it. If we took that out of the way just in case. Right, okay, so let's go again. I'll get the headphones on and you see what's going on inside here. Okay. Let's turn that off actually. Let's give it some gain. Certainly less scratch on that pot. That one too. I don't think there's any little bit maybe on that one, and again on this one, scratchy noise is gone. It's just in maybe a little bit, but it's just increasing the treble, which tends to increase the increase the noise, if you like. And that's with both of the drive settings. I think they are, what are they, Rock and Classic, and this one says GT2T SPKR simulator. That one's definitely for rock, but you know, I'm not hearing any noise there. Could be wrong. Let's press play again and see what it's doing. Yeah. Oh, wait there. What's this one doing? Just turn it. And then what's this doing here? Oh, I think it is increasing the bass. That's no bass. So it's definitely working. That's the volume, I'm guessing. Yeah. Right, what does this one do? Can't really hear what this one's doing here. Sounds a bit like a presence control, but I can't be certain on that. See hear that? These do go microphonic. In fact, they are microphonic to touch them. That one isn't. So to me, if there's an issue inside this pedal, I'll be pointing at this cap here. But again, it's right on the input. You can't hear any noise coming from the actual input. This cap here. So maybe I'll change that cap. I think it says on the side of it 471. So that's a nice easy find, you know what I mean? We can change that out. I think probably. Maybe it won't change anything because maybe it's just in that position it's particularly sensitive. But the rest of the caps, you know, maybe that one. But then again, the signal carrying caps and the signal going through it, so, you know, you expect a bit of noise. So C9's 100 NF and C1 looks like 47 PF. So I think I'm just going to change them to. Because they're the only two that are making noise out of it. I don't think that's an issue. And I can't see an issue with the pots, which is what he initially said that the problem was. And I'm guessing that's because I've cleaned them. So let's get these two changed and see what we got. Changed out this cap here for a massive Sprag orange drop, a vintage one. And then I've got an audio quality 47 PF cap here. Now this cap still making some noise. So if we were to turn it on, still some noise there. No noise there. So the 100 NF cap has made the difference, but this cap not so much. And I'm guessing that's because it's just the position it's in. Fine, that happens, doesn't matter. But now listen to this. This is insane. You ready? I'm going to turn the gain all the way up. Well, not all the way up, most of the way up, so you can hear the noise. That sounds excessive, doesn't it? But check this out. Do you hear that quieting down? I haven't even screwed that on. And it's quieting down. And that's because it's acting like an RF shield. So the radio frequencies from all my lights and stuff and the power in here is making electromagnetic waves that are then inducing noise into this pedal. But because the enclosure's in the way, it's hitting the enclosure, and the enclosure's grounded, and that just puts them all going to ground so they can't induce noise. And that was the whole premise of the Waylon McPherson video that he did not too long ago about, you know, cleaning the threads on the screws and scraping out the paint so you get a good connection on your lid. But listen to this. Mad. Anyway, let's test it. This is the drive. And bearing in mind it's in a higher gain setting. Treble. Really trebly, less trebly. Mids. Go from scooped all the way up. And then we've got our bass. No bass, turn it up. Booming, boom, and the volume. Now I'll take this out of rock mode, classic mode. Sounds pretty good to me. I don't know what this switch does. It's making a difference when that gain's up. It's kind of like to me it sounds like a presence control, but I'm not too sure. Here we have one of my old Joyo modified pedals that I did for my buddy Gordon. You can actually watch the modified build of this in my recent Joyo mods video. But we've got this, and we've got a signal wire here, or an input jack, coming from the TC Electronics wiretap. Now in practice you're probably not going to have a wiretap to hand, so maybe you would use just a normal guitar cable going to a guitar that you could strum to create some signal. But that's going into our input jack. Remember, that's on the left because the pedal's upside down. Now if I press play on my wiretap, and then I touch this here to the input jack, so the very end of this, we can hear that's what's happening. And then if I go to the output jack, nothing. And I'll tell you why that is. Because more often than not, the defect is probably you doing something wrong, let's face it. And I just never connected the DC power. So if I connect that, we can see the pedals on. So the output jack, here's our signal come through. Input, output. And it's just wherever you touch, so I can go, what's happening in this cap here? That's what the sound's like going to the cap. The other side of it, no sound, so that's probably going to earth. Same with this one. There's one side of the cap, and there's the other side of the cap, so you can actually hear what's going on with the cap. Right, okay, so what he's saying is this switch sometimes doesn't work, i.e. it's switching but nothing's happening, so that seems to be working. We're getting signal through, but we're not hearing any change. So I'm wondering now if maybe this switch, the contacts inside it are just seized up. So I'm going to probably take this apart now, which is quite fun because I did this a real long time ago, this one. And as you can see, what I've done is I've put this cap right in the way of switch coming out. So I added that cap after the switch and now I can't get it out. So that's going to be fun. But let's get this switch out and then we can replace it. Quick test of this pedal. I'll be using my new Lensing guitars. Look at this bad boy. It's like an offset telly shape, super light, super resonant. I mean, it's just, do you know what? It's bright and sort of present without being really trebly. It's just so good. Anyway,